there was some disappointment that I had to face again when it didn't happen year after year. And, I then just wasn't quite as excited about checking the email to see if it was going to come and wasn't spending as much time hoping that it would happen because wrestling again with, well, I thought I've done all the things I could do. And again, he was saying, but do you trust me? If it never happens, I really believe God was taking me to a point of saying, "You're enough. If this never happens, then that's okay because you're still writing my story."
Hey there, welcome to the God's Goodness Podcast. We are your hosts, Josh and Shelley Hankins, and we're here to share real stories of God's power, stories of hope, healing, and miracles that will strengthen your faith. No matter what you're walking through, we want to remind you that God is good and He's still moving today. Let's dive in. You can be deeply loved and still feel like there are parts of your story you'll never fully understand. Questions nobody can answer. Pieces that never got explained. The kind of unknowns that stay in the back of your mind for years. And sometimes the hardest part isn't what happened. It's living without knowing why. Today we're talking with Spencer and Lisa Breedlove about Lisa's adoption story, the questions she carried for years, and what started to change when conversations that had been hidden for decades finally began happening out loud. And at some point in this conversation, you stop hearing it as just an adoption story. So thank you, too, for being with us.
Absolutely.
Hey, we're glad to be with you. Thank you, Shelley.
Oh, my pleasure. Would you do us the honor of doing a quick prayer, invite the Holy Spirit into the atmosphere with us?
Absolutely. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you so much for this moment where you are honored and glorified through the stories of redemption and grace and healing. And God, we invite you into this space right now. And for those that are listening, God, we pray that their hearts would be in tune to what you are communicating and sharing with them and how you are encouraging them. Thank you for Shelley and for Josh and for their obedience in their podcast. And we pray that you'll continue to bless it as they leverage it to really hold up a mirror of your goodness to us. So we love you, Father, and we commit our time to you now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Before we jump in, I want to thank past guest April Farlow for connecting us. I'm really grateful she did.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad that April connected us as well.
Mm-hmm.
She's a good friend.
That's awesome. Now, as I was thinking about this conversation, one thing that kept standing out to me is how many people quietly carry unanswered questions about their own story in one way or another, and how easy it is to just learn to live around them. So, Lisa, before any reunification happened, before answers started coming, what did it actually feel like carrying so many unknowns surrounding your story for all those years?
Well, it was hard. And I do believe that other people struggle as well, whether you know all the parts of the beginning of your story and all the pieces that have led you to where you are at the current moment. I think we all struggle with that, but then maybe in a different way, I did because I didn't really know much about my beginnings. I grew up, my parents told me as much as they knew. I was in foster care a little bit, but you go to the family reunions and everyone's commenting, "Oh, she looks like so and so aunt," or they have the mannerisms of so and so cousin or uncle, or on that side of the family, we just see their eyes. And so I grew up being in those situations, and it was never said of me. I didn't have those connections, I didn't have those pieces, they were missing. And even in school, I can remember, as well as I do, that kids can be brutally honest. So just even things kids would say about, "Oh, where's your real family?" Or "Who's your real mom and dad? And why didn't they want you?" So even things other people would say to you plays into your mind of things that you begin to question, and you have to wrestle with it. And I would say that's kind of what it was. It was somewhat of a wrestling, and at different ages or stages or milestones in my life, it was a wrestling through.
I can understand half of that. I can empathize with half of that. Changing
Hmm.
schools when I was in high school, and all the kids
Yeah.
that I was friends with had stories and experiences with all the kids they grew up with that I knew
Mm-hmm.
nothing about.
Yeah.
Oh, remember that time in
Yeah.
seventh grade when? No,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't.
Uh,
And so I can't empathize with the teasing. Nobody teased me for being new to the school,
right.
but I can empathize with feeling lost, like I'm starting at the back of the book.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's rough.
Yes. Yes. I told Spencer one time I was trying to, just give him an understanding. And I said, it's like you work a 1,000-piece puzzle and you see the picture on the box, and you put your colors, you get your border with the straight edges, you're working everything, and you get to the end, and there's one piece, and you look on the floor, you look under the table, you look back in the box, did it get left? And you just can't quite completely finish it. And I remember feeling like that, especially as I got older.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. It's very frustrating, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really began to realize, though, as I got older and then grew in my faith, that God gives all of us stories, and He's the author of all of our stories. I mean, scripture says that He knew us before the foundations of the world. And then it tells us that He formed us and knit us together in our mother's womb, and then that He directs and orders our steps. So I think, it really began to click with me when I recognized that truth as an older teenager and thought, okay, but God is writing my story. And if I can just trust Him with that, even if I don't know and understand all of the aspects of it, that was really when He began to work in my heart and life.
Mm-hmm. How old were you when you were first put into foster care?
Okay, I went straight from birth into the state system and was put in a foster home. And the foster family, they had me for a little over 2 months before my adoptive mother and father were able to finalize everything and actually get me and take me home. So I was still pretty young, didn't spend a lot of time, but went straight from birth into foster care.
Okay, so you had no recollection of any family before.
I do not. I do not. I think my mother was given like just a couple of pictures when the adoption was finalized of the foster family had of me just as a baby, laying in the crib or whatever. They gave her a few pictures of me, but that was it. And she could tell me nothing about that. I mean, she's like, I wasn't there. I don't know what it was like. I don't know who your foster family was.
So your adoptive family were Christians and raised you Christian.
Yes, they were. I'm super thankful
Mm-hmm.
for the spiritual heritage that I did have just from the moment they brought me home. And even before then, they had prayed for a child to start their family. They were not able to conceive themselves, but got to the point of that adoption was an option, and had prayed several years because they wanted a baby. They wanted a girl, actually. My mother had had several sisters, and so had my father. And so they were specifically asking for a baby girl. Yeah. And so very thankful they did. They raised me in a home that was built on principles and took me to church where I learned of the Lord and accepted the Lord, was baptized in our church. And yeah, that's very special to me.
Now, was there a certain age where your heart started aching to know the answers about your biological mom?
I would say people have asked me this before. Well, when did you know you're adopted? I don't ever remember it being a revelation of being adopted. It was more that what I could understand at young ages, they continued to say, this is your story. God puts families together in different ways. You didn't grow in your mom's tummy, but you were in our hearts and we were praying and God placed you into our home. And so that was fine for a while. I believe it was maybe middle school when I remember first having some of those feelings because, again, just what you're going through as a middle schooler, adolescence, and all of that, and things people would say, and thinking, well, yeah, where were my beginnings? Who did give me birth? Who did carry me? And what were their stories? Like, what did she come from? What did he come from? And as a middle schooler, kind of mulling that around, but then obviously you're involved in your sports and arts and dance and school. So it wasn't like a big deal. Then I remember in college taking a psychology class and kind of diving into our backgrounds and things that shape us, nurture versus nature, and thinking, oh, wait a minute, I'd really like to see, my nature. Where did that come from? I have a better understanding of the nurture side and just really questioning. And I would do little things to dig. I would ask my mother and father, what did they know? What could they share? Did they have any documents they could give me? And they were very open, always open communication, would help me as much as they could. And I would maybe find little bits and pieces out that I could put together. But I think it really began to hit home when we had gotten married and were ready to say, let's start a family with children. Let's grow our family with children. And I would go to the doctor's appointments and I'm like, I have no idea what my family history is. I don't, they're asking me all these questions of, do you know if this runs in your family and what are you predisposed? I'm like, I have no idea from either side. And really having to wrestle with that of, that was a reality that I didn't know any of that. And there was so much unknown for me.
Hmm. Yeah, that'd have to be really tough. I work in the medical field, and so it's frustrating when I can't get a history on the patient himself, let alone
Yes.
when they can't tell me anything because they honestly
Yes.
don't know. They're not privy to it. They've never known.
Right.
It's
Right.
got to be really tough. And I mean, in today's day and age, when we have all the technology that we have to
Hmm.
stop things that we know could be in your family lineage, it might even be scary to not know that you're prone to something.
Right. Exactly. And I kept thinking, what, right, what might I pass on to my children that we can't even really prepare for because we don't know. And again, I know that that was the Lord just saying, quietly whispering in my ear, you just have to trust. There's just some things you aren't privy to yet, and you just have to trust.
Hmm.
So you started investigating like the history, and then at
Yes.
some point you got connected with your biological mom. So how did that connection take place?
Yes, so I had put my name. I finally, in my mid to late 20s, we had already had one child and we were preparing for the next one. And I had finally gotten to the point where I knew that I was born at a hospital, but that birth mother had spent time at a home for unwed girls. And I couldn't get any information from them, but they said there was a registry for the state that I was born in that I could put my name in this registry, as much information as I knew. And if she also, as a birth mother, put information in about a child that she had placed for adoption, they would make the match. And that would happen all on the computers, and then they would notify us. So that was like right before I turned 30. And I did that. And I think even at that point, I thought, okay, I've come so far. Surely this is going to happen now. And there was some disappointment that I had to face again when it didn't happen year after year. And, I then just wasn't quite as excited about checking the email to see if it was going to come, and wasn't spending as much time hoping that it would happen, because wrestling again with, well, I thought I've done all the things I could do. And again, he was saying, but do you trust me? If it never happens, I really believe God was taking me to a point of saying, you're enough. If this never happens, then that's okay, because you're still writing my story.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Part of that was when, what I remember is, Lisa was able to request what they call non-identifying
I did.
information
From the state.
from the state.
Yeah.
And so the state actually sent, some of it was redacted, but the state actually sent information, kind of a, just some basic information about where she was born. And all of this is in South Carolina. She was born in Charleston. The
A lot of
state,
that I already knew.
yeah,
There was a few
true.
things that gave us some insight, like a little bit of descriptive stuff about like hair and eyes, and
And
a little bit of background about grandparents.
yeah, we got, some of the
Yeah.
background on grandparents was that her grandfather was a pastor of a
Mhm.
church, but we didn't know where. We didn't know what part of South Carolina, or if it even was in South Carolina. But we had gotten a little bit of background on that. And then after we received that, then it was just silence.
Waiting again. Yeah, it was nothing. Mhm.
I had a headache for 4 straight days. It got so bad I was basically bedridden. That's when I tried the X39 patch for the first time. And within a short time, I noticed a difference in how I felt overall. Now we keep using X39 for energy, recovery, and soreness. What caught my attention is that it's not a supplement or stimulant. It's a patented, light-based wellness patch designed to support your body's natural repair processes. If you've been putting off trying X39, check out our link in the About section and finally look into it for yourself.
What about your birth certificate? Were you not allowed to have that?
Nope. I
Well,
researched that many times, talked to lawyers. Basically, so I have an amended birth certificate. So I even went so far as to continue to request copies, hoping that they would accidentally not pull the amended, because what we were told is when they would go to my birth certificate, it was stamped or somehow designated that this is closed. It was under an adoption case that was closed by the court. And then you must go to the adoptive file and pull the amended birth certificate. And the amended birth certificate actually listed my adoptive mother, my adoptive father, just as if she had gone to the hospital and given birth to me.
Mhm.
Really crazy.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
I feel like you can't withhold that information from a child. I feel like
I know.
I don't know the law, obviously, but I feel like that's morally not justified.
That was my argument. And that's why, in talking to professionals, they would explain to me is that you could go before a judge, you could petition, you had to have an attorney, you could go before the judge and petition, but it was pretty much up to the judge, just case by case, on whether they would rule in favor of birth mother rights to keep it secretive and closed, or whether they would rule for the adoptee and say, sure, we'll open the file. And they were like, basically, it's a 50-50 chance. And yeah. So I never pursued that. Once I was given that counsel, I thought, well, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of money for, I have no, 50-50 chance.
Mm-hmm. So you played the waiting game.
I did. I thought, well, I'll just continue to wait it out.
If Abram can do it, you can do it, right?
that's right. That's right. And probably where this is where the story really takes on and really accelerates, is we probably goes 10 years of waiting at least.
Over.
It's probably over.
I was in my late 40s.
I was just kidding
Yeah.
about Abram waiting, but like, okay.
That was about 20 years after I put my name on the
Yeah.
list about that.
And this was the fall of 2011. And at the time, Lisa is probably in her first year of teaching
Mhm.
at a school where we live. And then I'm on staff at a local church in our community. I get a phone call at the church and it's a voicemail. The voicemail is like late on a Friday, and I'm like, I'll just deal with this on Monday. I'm not calling anybody. The voicemail was from a lady who belonged to this organization in South Carolina. And I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of interesting because when I looked up the name, they're a domestic violence agency. And I'm like, well, I'm not committing domestic violence that I know of. And maybe I was like, why are they calling me? You know? And so I'm thinking, well, maybe they're just trying to raise me or something like that. So I'm like, I'll just wait till Monday. So Monday rolls around. I get into the office that morning, first one there. And it's like first thing in the morning, the phone rings. I pick up the phone, and it's this lady from this agency in South Carolina. And she begins to ask me, like, hey, is this Spencer Breedlove? And you're married to Lisa Breedlove. And I'm just yes, no answers. I'm not divulging anything 'cause I have no idea where they're going. And this lady's like, look, we need to get in touch with your wife. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to give me some more information because I'm not just going to release her phone number and her information to you. If you found me, you can find her.
Yeah.
And so we go back and forth for what seemed to be like a while, but it was probably just a few minutes. And she was like, look, ma'am, you're going to have to give me some information. And she said, well, I think we have found her birth mother.
Mhm.
And
Spencer knew what that would mean.
oh gosh, yeah. I said, I'll get right back. I will have her contact you. And just, I need to give her a call at where she's teaching. And I said, we'll be right back. We'll get in touch. So I got the lady's contact information and began to reach out to Lisa where she was working. And so I called the school where she was and I told him what was going on, basically. And I told him, I said, look, I said, I need to get in touch with Lisa. It's not an emergency. I said, but it is urgent. It is very important. And I don't know if people understand what urgent and important means, but it took what seemed like hours before she called me.
I didn't get the message at school. Now, was a teenager
Yeah.
that was delivering the
Yeah.
message and did not seem to be a sense of urgency.
Yeah, no.
And I'm thinking, I'm busy with a class full of third graders. I'll call later and see what Spencer's doing.
Yeah, if it's not
So
an
she-
emergency, it can wait, right?
Yeah. Right. So Lisa calls, we get in touch. And I said, honey, I said, are you sitting down? And she wouldn't answer me. I'm like, look, are you sitting down? She said, why? I said, are you sitting down? She said, why? I said, are you sitting down? She finally said, yes, I'm sitting down. I said, good. And I said, listen, I got a phone call and I told her the name of the agency and then
And
she
he never finished.
and I never finished my sentence. And Lisa said they found my birth mother.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I started crying.
She knew.
I did. When he said that name, I knew that that was an agency that had been a part. That was one of the pieces I had found back that at some point that agency had been a part of it. And I knew. And so I just, emotion overcame me and I started crying.
Yeah, Lisa's boohooing in her class, and all these third graders are like, "Well,
Scared them. Yeah, scared them.
It's okay. Sometimes blue makes me sad.
yeah, right." So from there, really, the story begins to move towards how, when, and what they've got to do in order to connect and meet face to face.
Yeah.
So how long was your biological mom looking for you then before they made the
So
connection?
it's interesting once we were able to talk and we've kind of figured out our timeline. When I had actually put my name on the registry, she had already had her name on for
Years.
probably 10 years. But 2 months before I put my name on the registry, she had called and taken hers off
Wow.
because her children, she had gotten married, had multiple kids, and they were in the stage of growing up. They were, in the throes of raising their kids. And she thought, I don't know if this is time for us to deal with this. And so it was crazy when we realized that she had taken her name off, and then 2 months later I put mine on, and that, is why she had already had hers for 10 plus years, and she's like, well, it's not happened. It'll be okay if I take it off. And then I put my name on, and it fits for now almost 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
That's incredible.
So how long
Yeah.
did it take you guys to connect, to meet each other, to talk on the phone, all this stuff?
After I called the caseworker back that very day, and she said, well, the South Carolina law, there's a few things you have to do. We require that both parties go through some counseling.
Oh my gosh, you had to wait
And
longer.
yes,
But
I
you guys
know,
are
I'm thinking,
adults. It's not like you're 17.
exactly. And the funny thing is, they had never even had a case of reunification, not this specific agency. And so we're like, why do we have to do this? And like, we don't know. That's the law on the books, and we have to go by that. So I said, fine, I'll do counseling. They were going to tell her the same thing. And I think, again, here's just one of those moments that God was teaching me a lesson. I thought, okay, well, I'll do it. She'll do it. And like next week, we'll be able to maybe keep moving forward. But they called me back, and they said, well, we got your information. Your counselor sent over documentation and reached out to her, but she is not able to do her counseling right now. This kind of caught her off guard. And, it makes sense now that I know that she had taken her name off. And then when her kids went to college, when the baby went to college, she put her name back on. And immediately they made the match. So, whereas I had been waiting for a while, she waited a couple of weeks, and boom, they're emailing her. And so I think it was, it was a lot to process for her. And they said she's not quite ready. She wants to, think about this a little bit, talk with her family. And I can't fault that. I can certainly understand that. So from like October until then January, again, I was just waiting to hear what she was going to decide, and prayed. I just, people were like, oh my goodness, you got to be going crazy. And I really wasn't, because I think I turned it into a matter of prayer, and not just a selfish prayer of, God, please let this happen, because that is what I wanted. Please let us talk. But it really became, I wanted to pray for her. I just wanted to pray that she, even without me being able to say this to her, that deep down the Spirit could just comfort her heart, that I was not going to be angry. I was not holding a grudge. I didn't want to talk so that I could fuss at her. I mean, I've seen talk shows and I've heard other stories. I wanted her to know that it was going to be okay. And I just would pray for that for those months. And in January, they called and said, okay, she did counseling. And here again, I get my hopes up, and I'm like, okay, can you give me a phone number? And they're like, actually, now that you've done counseling, South Carolina has a 30-day waiting period.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
All
So
the hopes.
then we waited one more month before
my
they gave
gosh.
us phone numbers.
Wow.
Yep.
I'd have been like, how many other steps are there before I get my
Well,
hopes
I
up
think
yet
I
again?
did ask that time. Yeah, I clarified. I said, are there going to be any more surprises? Or is this drop dead? This is it, right?
So
And then,
remedial counseling after 30 days to make sure we didn't change our mind.
exactly. Do we have to come back again a year later? But that was the last hurdle of just
Uh-huh.
waiting those 30 days.
Okay, so then you connect on the phone. How long did you guys talk on the phone before you got to meet in person?
Oh, goodness. It was funny. And Spencer always laughs because it was really a very brief conversation. I had always told Spencer and my mother and father that my hope and prayer was that I could just have a conversation and express to her how grateful I was that she gave me life. Abortion was legal. That was not what she chose. She chose life for me and then a plan for adoption. And she really was a hero in my eyes. My parents raised me just with a very healthy respect for her. And I wanted to share that with her, that I love my story. And I was thankful for the brave choices she made. So I told her as soon as she asked me to call her, she told the caseworker for me to call her. And she picked up the phone and I said, "Is this Kathy?" And she said, "Yes, is this Lisa?" And then we both it was silent. We were both crying. And then it was really a brief conversation. I said, "I just have to tell you something. And if we never speak again, I just need to share this with you." But at the end of me telling her that, she said, "Well, I wouldn't mind if we continue to talk." And I said, "Okay, I wouldn't either." And then we said, "Okay, let's meet up." But we really weren't sure how to do it. So we both said we were going to talk to our husbands. And we got off the phone. And Spencer said, "You didn't find out her last name. You didn't find out where she lives. You didn't, you didn't find out all these answers that you've been waiting for. What in the world?" And I said, "I can't explain it. I feel like I'm on the right track and I'm going to get some of those things answered, if not all of them eventually, but it's just baby steps."
I feel like that's a lot like what heaven's going to be like, because when we get there, we're going to just be so
Yeah.
awestruck that all the
Yeah.
questions that we have here are going to be not even thought of, not even remotely thought of.
true.
It's going to be just like blank slate, like, oh my goodness,
Like it
this
doesn't
is it.
matter.
This is happening. This is right now.
Exactly. Let me soak
I'm
it
not going to say,
in.
God, why did you
Yes.
make ticks? Like that's what's not going to be my first. That's not going to be my first question. You know,
Mosquitoes.
I'm just going to be, wow, Lord, I'm here, man. Whoo, love it.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
maybe after like 200, 300 years, I might be like, oh yeah, by the way,
Oh, I had a question.
Yeah, I had
I
a whole
do have a
list.
question. And I'm not questioning why you do things. I'm just, man, this thing.
Yes. Yes. After that conversation, we talked a few more times on the phone and eventually decided, oh, I was still just so busy with spring stuff at school and our children, their activities. It was going to be This was the end of February when we talked on the phone. It was going to be a couple of weeks before we could actually meet up. So we did meet up at the beginning of March.
And how old were you at this point?
Well, I was 37.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. 37, 38. Yeah. Just had
38.
I had my birthday. I was
You
38.
just turned 38.
Yep.
Mhm.
So we met on March. We met him, or Lisa was reunited. Met her on
Face to face.
2nd,
Uh-huh.
2012.
Yeah.
It was
Mm.
crazy.
Last spring, I came across something I honestly didn't expect to pay this much attention to. At first, I was just interested in the idea of saving money on everyday wellness products I was already buying anyway. But then I started noticing people I personally know getting paid weekly from a membership they were simply sharing with others. That's what made me really pay attention. Because it's not about stocking inventory, pressuring friends, or chasing customers around. It's a membership that gives people access to high-quality products at lower prices. And if you decide to share it, there's a compensation side attached to it too. After seeing real people get results from it consistently, I realized this could genuinely become a long-term income vehicle for the right person. If you've been looking for something simple that actually makes sense in today's economy, you should at least take a look at why so many people are paying attention to this right now. The info's in our About section. Where did you meet up, and who was all there?
That was kind of the thing. We're like, where do you meet your birth mom, and as well, she's asking herself, We don't really have them come to our house and we don't go to their house." And I was like, I don't know where to do this." And nobody really that we knew had gone through this. So
Mhm.
nobody had a set thing that would be the proper thing to do. And I thought, well, maybe in the middle, maybe at a public place. So maybe a restaurant around the table to us is important and kind of breaks it up for you and makes
Break
you a
some
little more
bread.
comfortable. Exactly.
That's what I
And
was
so we
thinking.
thought, well, Cracker Barrel, that's like home.
I was thinking Eaton Park, it's like go to Eaton Park,
Yeah.
share a
But we
meal.
didn't
You can't
cross
be
that
upset with somebody
route.
for sharing a meal with them.
Right.
But we did it at Cracker Barrel and sat there probably for 6 hours.
Well,
Wow.
6 hours.
I bet
Yeah.
the waitress was not happy.
Oh no, they loved it.
They were listening and like
Oh,
bringing people over.
Usually
loved
they get
it.
upset because
Yes.
you're taking tips, by sitting at the table the whole time.
We made sure we
Oh,
said
they-
we're gonna
they
make
got
it.
taken care of.
We're gonna make it worth your while.
So who was all there?
We had decided it would just be Mama Kathy and then her husband Keith and then me and Spencer. It was just going to be the four of us.
Yeah, a little less overwhelming that way.
Exactly. And then okay, well, we'll go from here
Mhm.
after that.
Wow. So what happened after that 6-hour meeting?
I did get a lot of bits and pieces filled in of the story. It was just great to finally hear and not guess. I think I've done some work with adoptees, and a lot of times we dream or we hope or we make up a story maybe that isn't completely true. It was good to just hear the truth straight from her mouth, and a lot of things were answered, which was sweet. And she said, I do want to continue this relationship, but I haven't told my children
Yeah,
yet.
nobody knew at this point.
She hadn't told her parents that she was meeting me, and that we had been matched and we're having, being. She had a lot to do on her end again before she was quite ready to just say, "Come on down." But she worked on that. We saw them another time. They actually drove all the way up here to watch our kids play soccer and just spend a weekend with us. And then June, the beginning of June, they invited us to their home because it was her parents' anniversary, their 60th anniversary, and we were going to meet the whole family at
Wow.
that point.
Wow. How far apart did you guys live from one another?
About 2 hours,
Oh,
not
okay.
far.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. Had
Wow.
always lived, about 2 hours from each other.
So now you get your family reunion. And now, did you get to hear those comments like, oh, she has, so and so's laugh or smile? Or did you hear those things?
Yes.
Boy, did we.
Yes, and like people would stare, and then people would like snap pictures and then come over and be like, "Look, y'all look exactly like your profile. And look, you do the same thing with your hands when you talk. And look at Papa's blue eyes." And
Mm.
yeah.
That's
Mhm.
so interesting considering that those aren't learned mannerisms. You didn't pick this
Nope.
up by hanging around them. That's literally
Not
just
one
genetically
day
inherited.
was I around.
Wow.
That's right. Mhm.
Yeah, that DNA's thick.
I can see the looks, but the mannerisms too. That really like lays down how God uses our blood to transfer from one person to
Exactly.
another.
Hmm.
Exactly. I wouldn't have believed that probably. I mean, you could tell me that and I'd be like, nah, until I
Yeah,
actually
you
saw
believe it
play
now
out.
though, don't you?
Exactly.
Wow.
Firsthand.
That's so cool. So how did the relationship go from there?
I mean, it really has just blossomed, and it's crazy. And I know people probably can't fully understand, but other than just God doing it, it was like almost we had just always been together. Not that she was my mother. She raised me and washed off my scraped knees and held me and, prayed with me at night and did all of those things. But just immediate connection in our hearts. And I know it's because she's a believer, the spiritual heritage that she had, My brothers, sisters were believers. That was just the key piece, that God was in it all.
Yeah, I think probably one of the coolest parts of Lisa's story and the story of her and her mom being reunited is really the story of, in the testimony of her granddaddy. Preacher John is what people called him.
Mm-hmm.
He was a giant of a man physically,
Mm-hmm.
but also spiritually. He was a pastor of one church
For over
for
40
40 years. And when it was discovered that his daughter was pregnant and had to,
as a teenager.
he submitted his resignation
Wow.
at the church, and the church rejected it, said, nope, you're our pastor and we're going to walk through this with you.
And they did.
And that was the early 70s.
Yeah.
That didn't happen in churches.
No.
It was
Not in Southern Baptist Bible Belt. Yeah.
And so for them to do that and then to walk alongside him and Granny and Kathy, there were trips that the church, some people would travel to go see Mama Kathy
in the home she was in.
That's the Florence Crittenden home in Charleston, South Carolina, which is still in existence.
It is.
Still does a lot of the same.
Still helping women.
But his spiritual leadership and legacy was amazing. And we got to hear him preach actually about 2 weeks after we met him. And then we would spend Christmases there.
Yeah.
It's just been an amazing journey.
Yeah.
Of family.
And had almost, a lot of years with him and Granny.
They treated our kids became grandkids, immediately. There was no
treating
nobody was
differently.
Nobody was treated differently. I was picked on as a son-in-law. So
as well
treated fairly. As I should be. Yep.
Know your place.
And then when he found out that I was in ministry and the time came for somebody to say the blessing at the meal, preacher or Papa what we call him, he was offered, all right, Papa, we need to say the blessing. He goes, I'm off duty.
It's Spencer's turn.
And so it truly was a special relationship there with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's incredible. I can't imagine adapting into a family I've never known so seamlessly as if I'd never been a part.
Yeah.
And I don't think even in my best dreams that I would have dreamed it would have been like that. I mean, we take family vacation.
Yeah. You traveled.
I've traveled with my sister. We just took a trip,
Did your adoptive parents have any other kids?
When I was almost 5, they went through the process again because they did want to add another child, and we adopted my sister. We're not blood related. They actually even had to go through a different agency since they had already received one child through one agency. They had to change agencies, adopted my sister, and we're about 4.5 years apart. And, with them, even been healing for them to watch this because they so desperately wanted children, and just kind of their perspective was, oh, these wonderful ladies that place their babies for adoption, how brave they are and selfless, allow us to now have these 2 daughters in our home. But I don't think they realized that they were also an answer to prayer. I don't think they saw the flip side of that until this all played out.
And so you got how many new siblings out of the deal?
So half siblings, there's 6 of us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, your family got big quick.
Oh yeah. It went from a nice little family tree to a banyan tree is what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Did I say 6?
You did say 6.
It's 5. It's 5. I lose count.
You said 6 total. So were you including you?
Right. I'm like, wait a minute. I was counting Bradley, but he's not a sibling. Yes, he's a nephew. He's just other.
So
He's
5
just-
total.
he's sibling adjacent.
Right. We're
Wow.
Our middle child, after we left that day in June of meeting everyone, our oldest, he was old enough to have a better understanding of how much that meant to me. And he being, you know, our firstborn, I shared with him, he was the first person I had had a blood connection with. I never had that with anyone. And that was just super special when Tyler was born. And he shared my genes that no one that I had ever known shared my genes. And so we left, and he's like, Mama, I'm so happy for you. And now you see where you got your blue eyes and your hair and whatever. But then the middle one, he said, I feel like our family tree just like blew up. And I don't know how I'm going to do a project on that if they ask me in school to do a project. He was just worried about that. And then
I'm just
the
going to leave that
youngest,
one
she
off.
didn't quite understand.
And so I don't know why I'm focused on your sister from your adoptive parents.
Yeah.
Did she get inspired by you to want to reach out and try to find her biological parents?
That's interesting that you say that. I was kind of always the one that was questioning, and again, not in a bad way, but just I'd really love to know.
Sure.
I really
Curiosity.
want to
Why wouldn't
find
you?
exactly. And Christy, she was like, I don't care. Like she just never had that desire. She's like, I don't understand why you care. What does it matter? This is our family. It's wonderful. And I'm like, I know that, but I still am curious. And she just wasn't as inquisitive. So when I kind of started doing more and putting my name on the registry, she's like, oh, maybe I could do that. And then when she was about to get married, her fiance encouraged her and said, Christy, maybe you should try at least what Lisa did and just apply for your non identifying information and just see. So she actually did. And they made a mistake by not blacking out her identifying information and cities and full names of things on her paperwork. And so she actually had it fall in her lap.
Wow, she got what you
And
wanted.
exactly. And there was a little bit of jealousy there, I will have to admit. But she ended up that she reached out to hers to try to make some closure or resolution, and it was not pretty. It was pretty horrible from the beginning, got worse and worse.
She should have gone through the
And
counseling.
I don't know why hers was it just well, we do know her entire birth family. I don't believe anyone was a believer.
So it's
It's
kind of
just
protection
yeah.
that
That's
Yeah,
she didn't
it's
have that
almost like
desire.
the other side of the coin.
it's
Yeah.
almost like God layered your revelation in a way that was a safer glide into the meeting,
Yes,
and he allowed her to
definitely.
just get that band-aid ripped right off.
Definitely. And she, it was great for her because that kind of happened several years before my reunification. And when Mama Kathy and Keith heard that Christy had actually gone through such a terrible ordeal, they were like, oh, we'll just pretend you're one of ours. What's one more? So it's super sweet. They ask about her and have included her in visits and holidays and things like that.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
tremendous.
Yeah.
I love it. We had a couple ladies that had troubles conceiving, April being one
Yeah.
of them. And then she had miscarriages, and then she ended up with more
Oh,
kids than she expected. And,
wow.
and so I hope somebody hears this and maybe they're in a tough spot and they might be
Yes,
considering, going one way or another, that them having the child could be that answered prayer for someone else.
that's true.
You
That
know,
is true.
God doesn't want any life destroyed. It's all for a reason.
That's right. It's
So
purpose.
if they can't take it and keep it and do all the things at the current time, I know it's a hard choice, I'm sure, but
Absolutely.
that could bless others.
Yeah, there's a loving family that wants them.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. They're out there. They're out there.
Mm.
Mhm.
Wow.
Well, thank you guys so much for,
Yeah.
coming along and sharing your story and how beautiful God has moved in your life and revealed to you what you really needed to know and connected not just with a family, but with a family of believers.
Mm.
I think that's tremendous. And, I understand the premise behind a teenage pregnancy in the 70s. I understand, especially in the South,
Yeah.
why the optics of it weren't perfect and why it was necessary for them to make decisions that they did. And I'm glad that they're not angry or bitter. And I'm glad that
Yep.
you're not angry or bitter. And I wholly give God the credit for your temperament and their temperament and the peace and joy that you guys have in your hearts. I thank you so much for sharing that story with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening.
I'm so glad you got to share that story, and I hope it is a blessing to many, and God leads this episode to those right hearts that need it in this moment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us. We appreciate
And
it.
letting us share.
Oh, my pleasure. Before you go, if this episode encouraged you or made you think of someone in your life, share it with them. You never know how God might use one story at the right moment. Thanks for spending this time with us today. And don't forget, God is always working, miracles still happen, and your story matters too. We'll talk to you next week.